Hi, I'm Lindy Whitten. Welcome back to my studio. Today I'm going to start off with talking about sunsets, and they're a bit of a tricky subject when you're painting them for a couple of reasons. Firstly, we kind of see colour with our child brain. So what I mean by that is, when we were little, we first started thinking of colour in terms of reds being very bright. As we develop our artistic experience and we develop in ways of observing, then we can see that reds are not always bright and yellows are not always bright. But sometimes when we're looking at a sunset, our child brain kicks in and we think all the colours are really bright. We want to think in terms of muted versus bright. The other thing is value, and that's really important because it's the same kind of thing. The cooler, darker colours we assign a very dark value, and the bright, warm colours we assign a very light value. And sometimes that disparity is too much, so we end up with too much contrast. So we have to be really careful to check our values, and a value scale can be really good for that. But the other thing that can be really good is turning that into a black and white. So we could try that as well. And that'll help us get the values right. And then the last thing that we sometimes forget is that there are two gradients. So what I mean by that is, in the light in the sky is darker at the top and lighter at the bottom, but also around the sun, it's lighter starting at the sun and moving out in a radial direction. So you have the two gradients, top to bottom, darker to light, and round the sun radiating out, lighter to darker. If we keep those things in mind, paint what you see, not what you think you see, get your value right, and remember that there are two gradients from light to dark, and that will really help with our sunsets.
What I like to do for something like this is print out a black and white, and here's my colour version, and then I use the black and white to test the values there. So I'm looking at the colour mark on there, and if the value looks about right, that's going to go in my box. And then I want another one, so I'm going to take that one as well and put in my box. And that's what I do. And you can see I'm testing them on this piece of paper here, testing them on there for the value, and then selecting them. Here we are, we're going to get started now. I've chosen this colour of the paper, and if I put the photo on here, you can see it's going to help me a lot with these darker areas down in the beach and make a good harmonious background for the rest of it. So that's why I've chosen this colour. I have the pastels chosen, and now I'm going to just start by blocking in some areas. First I'm going to put in the horizon line so I can set that early, and I'm just going to use a very dark one to quickly give me a suggestion of where those rocks are going. Now, like a lot of my paintings, I'm not really worrying too much about getting it exactly. It's more about the feeling of it than being exactly true to the photo. Okay, so I've blocked in that very dark area. I'm going to block in this other very dark area here, because these are my darkest values, and it's going to help me set the rest of the values. So just blocking it in, lightly scrubbing it across there. The pastels I'm using today are a mixture, and these ones are Rembrandts, and they're a semi-hard one. And then there's a few selections. They're out of my mixed box, but I can tell that these are Great American Artworks. That's a Great American Artwork, and this is a Terry Ludwig. So that's the pastels that I'm using. So I've blocked in the two really major dark areas, and now what I'm going to do is start working up in the sky there. And for each of the colours I've got a harder pastel. This is the harder Rembrandt, and I'm just blocking in where most of that colour's going, and I've got a softer one which I'll use later, but first I want to block in the colour. I've got a couple of different values of the purple here that's just going to go into the violets, going into that blue, and then a lighter one, and we'll do a bit of blending with that later. I'm going to run that blue into the violets as well and over there. That's just trying to bring it all together in a nice gradient. So we talked about gradients from top to bottom, so I want it to be darker at the top, lighter at the bottom, but also from the sun radiating out. So the sun's going to be here and it's going to radiate out that way. So now I've put in a little bit of blue through there and put those in there. Then I'm going to start thinking about the pink. So I've got a darker value pink up here, which is probably too bright. Now we talked about that, my child brain kicked in. I've got a lighter one here, but what I'm going to do to help with that, counteract that, is to use that mauvey, the paler mauvey colour, just to sort of grey it off a little bit, the pinks, and run that right through there again. So I'm starting to get the sky in with a gradient from dark to light and from dark to light over closer to the sun. Through here it's an orangey kind of colour, so I'm going for this orange to start with, and really it needs to be a little bit darker than that. That's a little bit too light there, but it might do quite well over for some of this orange here, which is again quite a grade off orange. So I'm going to use a couple of different, that's much too yellow, even though I tried it out on my paper, it's wrong. I've also got this one, which is the lighter one, which I'm going to put in some areas there. So I'm just checking back here, and I'll put some yellows in now. That's a bit too green, that yellow. So even though you sort them out at the beginning, they don't always come out the way you're hoping they will. This is the really light area there, and I'm just putting that in now, and I'll be giving that a little bit of white to make it a pale lemony sort of white to make it fit in. Now that's probably a better yellow, but again they need to be greyed off a bit, and so I will be giving them a little bit of a grey off to it, and I'm just dragging that up into purples. And down here it's going to be a little bit of the purple with some of the orange, just to grey it off a little bit. And run it over towards the rocks there. And then I've got these darker colours coming through there, so I'm just going to put a few of those darker purples, which are going to get a little bit of this colour as well, which is a more red purple. So that's all going in, and even though it's a bluer purple, I'm going to put in a bit of this red purple and then blue it off a bit. So you can see that I'm mixing up even within one sort of block of colour there, I am mixing it up by layering, and that will give me a bit more variety and interest in it. Pulling it down into the rocks, and that's fine because I'll be coming back and sorting out those rocks later on. So I'm starting to get the colour. This one needs a bit more purple in it, just to get the values a bit brighter, and this one needs a little bit of orange around the edges, so sort of orange underneath there, and then the shadows become sort of the complements of the oranges. So I've got some purples in there and bluey colours, which are the complements of the lighter areas, and that's a good way to deal with clouds. So I'm getting in all that now. Over here I'm going to keep layering now, so I'm going back in again with the pink, a little bit more pressure on that, drag it a little bit over into some of this blue area. I'm going to work this darker blue up here. You'll notice I haven't done anything down on the sand yet, so I do need to tackle that as well. I'm going to put a little bit of pink through here. It's looking a bit too light, so I'll go in with a bit of this already violet colour there. And just use my finger to take a bit of that out. So it's coming along in the sky there. It's just going to needing to be sort of layered around there. So I'm trying not to get too hung up on the colours either, because a lot of you will have limited sets of pastel and you won't have all the colours that you might like. So I'm just using a little bit of layering with different pastels to show you that if you haven't got the colour, just use some different pastels that you do have to try and recreate the colour that you're after. I'm just going to now continue all this layering until I've got the effects that I'm after in the sky. You can just watch along. Going to do is just a quick blend, and really I'm just going to be taking a clean finger and just dabbing a few areas, not doing the whole swipe across, just dabbing a few areas like so, to try and get rid of some of the under paper colour. I don't want quite so much showing through. So you could do it that way, you could do it this way, but notice the difference when I do it that way and when I just tap. You get a more interesting and not so smooth and boring blend when you just do a bit of a tap with your finger rather than a big swipe. So I'm just going to do that all over the sky now. I have chosen some softer pastels here which I'll be using on the sky. But first of all I want to go into here again with the harder pastels and establish this area. I'm going to start with looking at that area there, over here, the sand, and get that in. So just block that all in. It needs to be quite a lot darker than that, so I'm just going to pop that in first, then I'll go back into this darker colour. This is quite soft. I'll be using some of the blue as well. So I'm just mixing those up at the moment to create that sand area. There's going to be a few little ripples and things going through here, so I'm just giving the suggestion of those right now. The other thing when you're doing a sunset is when you're taking reference photos, often the foreground will be much darker and you won't see much detail in it. This one's not too bad. If you're taking them yourself, just be careful and take a photo that's focusing on the sky and then another one that's focusing on the foreground, and use them both when you're starting your painting, because it will be very helpful, and you will then get some detail in the foreground, because when you're actually standing in front of the sunset, you will see detail in the foreground. Just adding in some more darks here, and that's a very smooth area, and I'm actually going to do a little bit of blending with my fingers on this one, because I find that sand just looks more convincing when it's blended. So here I am going to give it a full blend like so, around the edges, softening off the edges. You can tell it's soft because I'm losing a lot of the pastel there. So now I've got that area in, I'm going to start concentrating on the water. I'll be coming and refining the edges later on. The ocean now needs some work, and I'm going to be putting in over here some of those paler blues, and that's far too pale and bright, so I'm using this violet to this purpley colour, and I'll still deepen that again. That's actually more. So sometimes I work it out on the paper as I'm going. Sometimes I work it out beforehand. And sometimes I think I've worked it out beforehand, but then as I go I realise I haven't. I'm going to use that now to just sharpen up the horizon line there. And that's got quite a bit of yellow in it, so I'm going in with a yellow kind of colour. And I think this one's going to be a little bit of a combo, so it's more a yellowy orangey kind of colour than a straight yellow. So I'm just going in with a then as I come down I have some oranges. Here there's a big swathe of kind of orange coming around through there, so I'm going to pop that in now. And then we'll come down through there. And this is just to get in those main areas. There's some quite deeper oranges. They won't be as orange as this, and again I'll be knocking that back, but I just want to get a little bit of that colour in, a little bit of that colour through there, and then I'll start knocking it back with a lighter version, a little bit more greyed off version. So the ocean's starting to come along. You can see how the background paper's working quite well there as well. And then I'll just add a bit of the mauvey purples into that area as well. Just letting some of the background come through. I want to have a little bit of the yellow. I'm actually going to go in and strengthen a few little I've got this area to think about, and that's got quite a little bit of pink coming along here. So in goes the pink, and some little bits of pink on some of those, and then I've got these areas here. So I'm just going to use this kind of pastel to give the idea of that. And again, I'm not worrying too much about getting it all exactly. I'm just getting the idea of where these shapes and colours and values are. So it's getting the feel and the look of the original photo there as I continue. And it doesn't need to have all this area resolved really carefully. Just putting some little bit of lighter colour around where that lightest bit is and building the colour out from there, because that is the lightest bit of the sky there. And if you go too much, you can just drag a little bit of that back onto the white area there. Some of these colours are slightly more exaggerated than they should be, but that's up to you. You're the artist. This is mauve again, but it's a bluer sort of mauve rather than a red one, so I'm using that in there to indicate some of the water coming down through there. So if I want to indicate that it's wetter there, I can use my finger and just give the water a little smooth out like that, which indicates that it's wetter than the surrounding sand. Just that little and I can do that over here too, pulling it down. So you can see I'm using some of this colour from the sand to accent some little bits of the rocks as well, so that there's some colour in the rocks. I think I need to tone down that yellow a bit, so I'm just using this more peachy colour to go in there. and maybe in there, in some of these orangey areas. And again, it can be used for a couple of little clouds over here, and they will get a little bit of the purple in them too, to help them stand out a little bit against the background. So I'm just cleaning up a few little bits and pieces there with my finger. And then it's time just to tidy up the rocks there, and a little bit more work down here, but again not much, because I don't really want this to be the focus. It's quite interesting, but I think it's going to detract from the subject, which is the sunset. Just smooth that off where it reaches out into the wet. Little lighter bits of pinks there. Giving that a quick glide across with my finger too. Spots back there, and then I'm just going to come in here and add a few of these. So at this stage it's just looking for bits that I want to change slightly. A lot of the darks can be quite hard, even when you're in a softbox. This is a Terry Ludwig, and it's quite scratchy and hard, so sometimes you don't get the shape you're hoping for, but that's okay. I'm just going back in and dragging that. So one thing, when it's quite hard, it will blend really well because it doesn't deposit so much, but it pulls the other pastel. is a few areas of sharpening up around the rocks there. Sky I'm fairly happy with. It might get a little bit more blues, some little bits of blue through there. What I want to do is just tidy up with some harder sticks. So I'm going back to Rembrandt's, just doing a little bit of sharp edging because the rocks do stand out quite sharply against the evening sky. I don't want them to be too black, so I'm going back in again and just giving them a little bit of extra colour there. Calling that done.
And just as a quick recap, I took the photo, turned it into a black and white, then I used the black and white to sort out my values and collect them, and then worked on the painting here. If you really enjoyed that, I'd love to hear your comments below. You can subscribe, and I'll be trying to do some more videos on a more regular basis. I really enjoyed doing that one and hope to see you again soon. Okay, bye for now.